Buggy says hi.
Hello, I'm Dave Miller. I'm the project leader for the Bugzilla project, and welcome to our stream for today. I'm still getting up here slightly. We've got hearing noise that I wasn't supposed to hear when I triggered that alert a second ago. So where the heck did it load at? Apparently have that open in a browser window somewhere. I was getting an echo. I don't know. If I hear it, I hear it. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to start off with was what's going on with the releases that are coming up. And if I can get a second to pull that up here. Here we go. So we have a bunch of releases coming. This is off the a blog post that we made a few months back. But Bugzilla has usually two stable releases. We have the current one and then an immediate past. And the immediate past stable right now was released in 2013, which has been a long time ago. And so it's been a long time coming getting the rest of the stuff out. So the 4.4 branch is the immediate past stable release, and that is the one that we are having major headaches trying to support now because it's so old and it doesn't even run on some of the modern NASs now. Like you have to install really old dependencies to get some part of it to work. So hopefully there's not too many people running on that anymore anyway, but our support policy says we can't get rid of it until 4 months after the next release, which is the one that we're coming up doing, this 5.2 down here. So as soon as 5.2 releases, then 4 months later we can get rid of the 4.4 branch. So we have one more release on 4.4 coming. And then we have a 5.0.4.1. And this is the confusing one, because we have a few months back, we had, well, not a few months, it's been a few years now. We had somebody new at doing the release stuff and accidentally dropped a few things into the release that shouldn't have been in it. And so the 5.0.5 release turned out being what really should have been 5.2. It had stuff in it that should not have been on a stable release branch. And there were, as mentioned here, there were a number of people that we know of who pay attention to the change logs and noticed that it was invasive changes with no security fixes in it. And so they just stayed on 5.0.4 instead of upgrading. So our security update for the 5.0 branch is going to go on 5.0.4.1. We're going to continue from 5.04 instead of from 5.06. But the 5.06 branch is also going to continue, and that basically became 5.2. So what we're going to call the 5.2 branch coming up is actually continuing from 5.0.6. And we're just going to call it 5.2 to make it official that it's actually a feature branch and not just bug fixes. Because there is a bunch of new stuff on it that shouldn't have been in 5.0. And then we have the 5.1.3, which is actually going to be 5.3.3. Are you rearranging? I have a guest. He's turning around, deciding to face the other way, so say hi. Your camera? Guess not. Okay. You can sit down again. So since this blog post got made, we've actually renamed that to 5.3 to avoid confusion with 5.2 because this was the main branch trunk, if you want to call it that, which was development continuing on after 5.0 and now 5.2. And so that was the release that's coming up is going to be 5.3.3, which will be continuing from the 5.1 branch. So if you were already on 5.1. whatever, 5.3 is just going to be continuing development release on that branch. We're trying to minimize what we're checking in on that branch, though. We're putting the priority on the 5.9, which is soon to be Bugzilla 6, which is the Harmony branch. That is porting out what is in bugzilla.mozilla.org as of a year or so ago. Mozilla forked from Bugzilla at version 4.2, and they've been continuing their own development on it, only pulling minimal things from upstream. And they have done, 4.2 is old, but they've done a lot of really cool stuff to it, and we wanted a lot of what they had. And we had decided it was going to be easier to port out, easier to backport the new stuff that we had on top of what they had than it was going to be to try to pull all the new stuff that they did onto ours. So we branched back from theirs, basically. And so 5.9.1 is bugzilla.mozilla.org's code with a bunch of our stuff backported on top of it. And so 5.9.1, which is coming up, is going to be, we missed September 15. Obviously, it's been months since this blog post was posted. I had big dreams of how fast we were going to get that out. That turned out to not be true, because every time we got close to having it ready to go, we found major things missing that needed to be done and took a month or two to do. It's like it was definitely not releasable in the state that it was in. I had big dreams when I made that post. Had higher hopes than I deserve to have. So, hello, Emmanuel. I see you in chat there. So we have so the 5.1, which is now 5.3, is we're kind of avoiding putting anything there. We are going to get the security patches that are coming up ported to there. So we are going to have there is security content on the upcoming releases. And so 5.1 will get the security patches, but that's more or less it. Most of the development work is going into 5.9.1. And as of right now, 5.9.1 cannot be upgraded to from 5.3. There's a couple major things in 5.3 that are not in 5.9, and it will confuse your database greatly if you try to move from one to the other. We do have a couple of features in 5.3 that we are trying to port over to 5.9 before Bugzilla 6 comes out to make that transition easier so you won't lose things. One of those being one of the coolest new things in 5.3 that did not make it into Harmony yet is completely separating your email address from your login. So you get a username, which is a real username, which is not your email address. And that username is you instead of your email address. And then you can have one or more email addresses on your account, which don't have anything to do with your login. And that will help eliminate one of the biggest problems Bugzilla has ever had, which is people scraping email addresses out of it from all the people, since it uses email addresses as identifying people. And that is not in Harmony, and we want it to be before we release it. And because of the database changes required to support that feature, that needs to come over first before you can upgrade from 5.3. And right now that hasn't made it yet. So if some enterprising person wants to port that patch over to 5.3 in the next couple of weeks, hey, that would be fantastic. I would delay this release for it if somebody has that in motion and thinks they can get it out in a week or so. But yeah, there's a lot of other things, differences between those two, which, hey, I should show off that too. Ravenbrook Limited, many years ago, made this fantastic tool for comparing one version of Bugzilla to another, comparing what was in the databases between them. So you can see here there's not a whole lot of database changes between 5.0 and 5.2. The tables in blue here had changes made to them. And it's basically the flag types. We changed the number of which one has a description in it? Maybe they don't. But anyway, we changed it from a small int to a medium int, the identifier for the flag types, which is basically allowing more than 256 flags, which was a very annoyingly low number, as Bugzilla.mozilla figured out. This patch came from them at some point because they had more flags than that. So now you can have 65,000 flags instead of 256. And if we go back to the list again and we look at the difference between, oops, we go to changes here. There's 5.3.3 and 5.9.1. And that is a big mess. And this is why you can't upgrade from 5.3 to 5.9.1 yet. The green here indicates new tables that did not exist in the other version. The red indicates tables that don't exist anymore. And the blue is tables that had changes made to them. And you can see there is a lot of changes. And so there's code that needs to be written to can do all those schema conversions. The green tables will just show up automatically because new tables get created if they're missing. But the code to remove the missing tables and to make schema changes to the tables that exist need to be written. A lot of it does actually exist already because the code to convert from 5.0 to 5.9 is mostly there. And so a lot of these changes do get picked up in that conversion. But there's a number of things in 5.3 that aren't in 5.0. Like if we come back here and do our 5.2 to 5.3 comparison. See, there's not a whole lot of changes from 5.0 to 5.3. Yeah, there are some, but the 5.2 to 5.9.1 has a lot of changes as well. And I think the 5.2 to Harmony update isn't quite there either. A lot of it is, but your mileage may vary. My gut instinct right now is you'll probably have issues if you try to upgrade to it right now. So if you wanted to try out the 5.9.1 release when it comes out, do it with a new install. Don't use it for upgrading from an existing install. Or upgrade from an existing install if you have a backup copy of it and you run it on the backup. You know, if you have a staging instance set up and you want to experiment on it, be my guest. File bug reports for what's still broken after you upgrade. We would love to see that. Because I was intending to have the upgrade code in place before we release 5.9.1. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. There's not enough time. I got to get this release out the door. We can't keep stalling it. There's security content in it. I don't want to hold the security content any longer. We got to get it out the door. So 5.9.1 is probably not going to have the upgrade code in it. It's there for people to experiment with. New installs, 5.9, it's an odd number in the middle digit. That is a development release. It's meant for people to experiment and play with. It's not meant for production releases. So it's going to go out without the update code. People can try it with new installs or file bugs on what they can't get to work after trying to upgrade. And then hopefully we can get the upgrade code in place by the time we do 5.9.2. 5.2 has a lot of new stuff in it. Oh, it's on a branch that didn't land yet, that's why. Spell it right. Oops, I bumped something. There we go. There's 5.2 release notes. Excuse me. So we got a lot of new stuff in 5.2, which is why we're making it 5.2 instead of 5.0.7. One of the biggest things in it, we support MariaDB explicitly, and we support MySQL 8. Those kind of came hand in hand. A lot of related changes to each other to make it happen. Support for MySQL 8 has been the biggest thorn in our side for a long time because MySQL 8 made breaking API changes, which broke Bugzilla. And it took us, it was basically an extremely invasive change to fix Bugzilla to work with it, because it was basically the name that we use for the table that stores our groups in it, which is the authorization system in Bugzilla for keeping track of who's allowed to see what, if you have private products or security bugs or that kind of thing. The table that keeps track of that was named a name that MySQL 8 decided to make a reserved keyword. And Bugzilla's code did not have it properly quoted, which meant it was now conflicting with their keyword. So the fix for that was to make Bugzilla quote it like it was supposed to. And that was a pretty invasive change because it's pervasive all over the code where that group table gets used. But somebody volunteered and picked it up and did all of that. And I don't remember their name right off the top of my head, but I'm very appreciative of that person for doing that for us. Hey, our bug macro is missing spaces between bug number and the word bug. We'll have to fix that. But I can look at the bug report for it. Why did I end up on the home page instead of that bug report? That's weird. Okay, let me copy the link and paste it. I'm pretty sure that wasn't a private bug. Let me check and make sure. BMO's redirecting away from that bug. It doesn't like it. Yeah, I even logged in as me where I got full access to the Bugzilla product. Okay, that is exactly the URL I put in. Why did it redirect? Okay, so Jeff Lawson, there we go. There's so we give him proper credit. That's the person who did who filed the PR for us that fixed that. So thank you very much. We really, really appreciated that. And MariaDB, for those that don't know, MariaDB is a fork of MySQL. And I believe that it is run by the original maintainer of MySQL, who split it off after Oracle bought it from him. It was basically a drop-in replacement for MySQL for a long time, and they never took the patch that made groups be a reserved keyword, so MariaDB has continued to work with Bugzilla through all of their newer versions. And so that is why Bugzilla's tech support response to people complaining about MySQL 8 not working has usually been go install MariaDB instead because it's a drop-in replacement for MySQL, and they didn't take that patch that broke Bugzilla. But as of MariaDB 10.6 or so, they're not exactly drop-in replacements for each other anymore. They have diverged far enough that put it this way, the Perl MySQL driver on the current version of Perl will not build against the MariaDB drivers. The older versions of it did. So you could use the MySQL client libraries and connect to a MariaDB database for a long time. And you kind of sort of still can, but only if you have the MySQL 8 server libraries locally to build against to build the Perl drivers for it. So if you had MariaDB on the same machine with your Bugzilla installation, you couldn't build the Perl driver because it would refuse to build against the MariaDB libraries, the newer version of it. So Bugzilla now has explicit support for MariaDB. There is a separate Perl driver for MariaDB now, and Bugzilla uses it. So if you have MariaDB and you have Bugzilla set to use the MySQL driver and you run check setup PL, it's going to bail on you. That's the upgrade script to upgrade from one version to the next. It'll bail on you and tell you, hey, it looks like you're using MySQL driver, but you're connecting to MariaDB. We actually have a separate driver for that now. Go use it. So, and that was another part of the reason for that was that MariaDB and MySQL have, in the newer versions of it, have a different definition of what UTF-8 is. And that was confusing the heck out of Bugzilla when it was trying to convert from older databases to UTF-8. Like basically it would think that your database wasn't UTF-8 yet and try to convert it again every time you run check setup PL, even though it had already been converted, just because MariaDB called it something different than MySQL 8 did. And so we do have proper checks in place for that now, and it detects properly that it's been converted. The other big cool thing that we got out of this is there is a demo Docker configuration. So if you don't want to screw around with installing all the prerequisites, you just want to play with it and see how it works, CD into your checkout if you have Docker installed, Docker compose up, and you will have a running Bugzilla installation as soon as it takes it, as long as it takes to build it. And it will use a couple of pre-built Docker images for the prerequisites and then install Bugzilla on top of that with whatever you have in your local directory there. And it's cool you get to play with it without having to do all the installation if you have Docker, so that's pretty cool. And then there's other few minor changes. UTF-8 data encoding is now enforced. It was optional for several versions. If you didn't have it converted to UTF-8 yet, you could do it manually and then tell Bugzilla you'd done so. And Bugzilla will force the issue. If you try to upgrade to 5.2, it will convert it for you. UTF-8 is the only option now. Some other minor changes. Test script works with self-signed certificates now. It didn't used to. Side effect of fixing the groups thing, we now have a API in the Bugzilla database driver to quote identifiers, which should be used anytime you're using identifiers like table names and so forth. Future-proofing it, always use identifiers whenever possible. And then a couple upstream dependencies changed. That we had email address is basically abandoned, and email address access is still maintained. And so we switched to using that to make sure we can get updates for it. But that did change APIs for interacting with it. And so that's what's new in 5.2. Section 508 compliance. That is basically accessibility. We did land a number of fixes in 5.2 that were related to accessibility. So hopefully it's more compliant than it used to be. Nobody has done a thorough enough review of it to certify it. But we've made good strides on it on several pages. And if you find things that are broken, for accessibility wise, please file bugs. There is a bug for this 508 compliance audit. If you file bugs, make that it didn't redirect. I don't know why it was doing that. So anyway, there is a bug here for the Section 508 compliance. So if you find any accessibility issues with Bugzilla, please file bugs and make it block this bug. It is Bugzilla-Section 508. You can just put that in the blocks field when you're filing the bug report. And so we'll find them easily when we get that out. Both 5.2 and Harmony release were interested in fixing all the accessibility issues. Ongoing help wanted. Bug triage. Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, I love how I'm promising upcoming things in a few weeks in this blog post, and then it's been months since then. Just so many things that we thought were ready to go weren't when we actually got down to working on it. At the time when I wrote this blog post, I had been back involved with Bugzilla directly, like maybe a month or two. And for a long time, I had been too busy to do anything with it and was relying on other developers to keep running it. And most of them had a lot of other things happening in their lives and haven't been able to spend much time on it lately. So not a whole lot had happened the last 2 years. And my personal situation changed such where I suddenly had a lot of time available that I could actually work on Bugzilla. So I got back involved again. And that about 6 months worth of the time in between then was spent with me doing legal stuff, negotiating with Mozilla and so forth. We made this, up above this, we had the Zara Bugs Corporation we set up in order to manage the Bugzilla product so that we could accept monetary donations, with the biggest goal of that being to get us a paid developer to take care of Bugzilla. For many, many years, all of the development on Bugzilla was handled by developers at big corporations who used Bugzilla. Usually the person that maintained their Bugzilla installation, they gave them extra time dedicated towards working on upstream Bugzilla. And that is how Bugzilla got maintained, was work paid for, provided in labor by the big companies that used Bugzilla. And the last of the companies that still did that pretty much quit doing it during COVID. So everybody was too worried about their bottom lines trying to pay their employees when everybody's profits tanked during the economy going down. And so that's kind of where we're at. So if you run a big company that uses Bugzilla and you want to help development on it, we would love the help. If you can get us a developer that can spend some time on Bugzilla, even just a couple hours a week is probably enough to get some motion going on the project. But also, that's the reason we have this new entity, is to pay for a developer so that Bugzilla actually has a developer working on it all the time. And I've been kind of doing that myself right now. I want to do some shout out to the Document Foundation, who did provide some funding to pay me for a lot of the time that I've spent over the last several months working on Bugzilla. But theirs was a short-term funding in order to get the Bugzilla 6 out the door, which we made major progress on Bugzilla 6 thanks to that. So we need money to pay a developer. If you can give it to us, that would be great. You can see, I have to scoot over on camera enough to point up in that corner of the screen here. There's a bar up there that shows that is recurring monthly donations. We do have a fixed amount of monthly expenses to pay for server hosting and our general paperwork expenses, IRS filings, and so forth cost money that need to be done every year in order to exist as an entity. So there's that overhead of keeping the entity existing. But then we need recurring monthly donations to fund having a developer. We have to have ongoing incoming income in order to pay the developers. It can't just be one-time donations to cover that. We do accept one-time donations. On that same page it's given there, the bugzilla.org/donate. The one-time donations would go towards one-off projects and unexpected expenses. Like, for example, we just discovered this last week, GitHub hasn't been doing a good job of charging sales tax when they collect money from people, and they're going to start doing that in August. And in order to not have them charge you sales tax when you make a donation to us through GitHub, we have to provide them with our certification from the IRS that we are a tax-exempt organization. And as far as the IRS is concerned, the fact that we are a 501c4 entity exempts us from paying tax to them. But for us to get the certification from them that we can give to other people, to prove that to other people, we have to file a form that has a $600 filing fee. Yikes. So that is another unexpected expense that is going to come out of our general fund from the one-time donations people have given to us. We do have enough money to cover that right now. But that's taking away from, we were hoping once we got a couple $1,000s in there, we could throw that at some major bug that needs fixing. But like maybe that accessibility work. You could pay somebody to actually finally do that audit, to go through everything in Bugzilla and make sure it's all accessible. That would probably be a good thing to throw that money at. But then we have to collect some of it back, because we're still, I think the, let me see, that's on the same website. If I can come back here, contribute, money. So yeah, we got $1,300 right now. We haven't pulled that 600 out yet. I think that's closer to 1,500 now, because I didn't do the rollover for June yet. The money that goes into this permanent developer fund, the donations towards that sit in that fund until the end of the month. And if we don't make the 4,000, then we can't pay a developer, and all of that money gets rolled over into the general fund at the end of every month. So that $175 from May still has to get rolled into here. So we're looking at $1,500 right now, but that 600 hasn't been pulled out of there yet. So we're, what is that? 1,500 minus 600 is 900, something like that. So yeah, we need a bit of money to, after that 600 comes out of there, to pay for any projects still. So we do have some larger donors. One, there have been some larger one-time donors, but they're the only recurring one that's giving more than 150 a month. And then, as you can see, we have the ongoing expenses, so that gets covered first. And then the permanent developer fund gets after the ongoing expenses have been covered. And I am not going to add that $600 onto our ongoing expenses because that's a one-time form. We're never going to have to pay it again. So that's just going to come out of the general fund. So in the chat, Danny is saying, I wonder if people would be interested in onboarding videos, could do it during a live stream where you show some specific parts of the code. For example, I'm curious about the API and enhancing it so we could explore building a UI on top of it. That is an awesome idea. Thinking about that, there's some degree of stuff that we could look at right now with that, but on the other hand, it would be good to have some things prepared so I'm not just winging it. It would make a better video if we go through and it would make a better video to have it prepared ahead of time. So we're not doing lots of ums and ahs when we're talking. Like right now. Now here's the meat of it, getting Bugzilla, the current slate of Bugzilla releases out the door. We have 4.4.14. This banner on the front page, the banner on the admin page or index page, whatever, if you're logged in as an admin, with the UL date for it, that is living on a Git pull request right now, GitHub. The patch is done, it's just waiting for the date to be set so that it's going to be checked in when we release. The release notes are done, sitting on a branch ready to commit. So 4.4 is essentially done. Just waiting for us to actually release it. Same with 5.04. The banner on the index page with the UL date, I actually ended up writing that as a generic patch. I added a field to in the data returned by our update check to give an end of life date for a branch, and if there is one set on it. Instead of currently, the only thing it does is give you the release date for the new branches. But it will give an end of life date for existing branches now if one's been set. Or it will when I push that out, which is going in tandem with this pull request. So I ended up putting that on all of the branches so that instead of just hard coding it in the 4.4 code to say, hey, this is our end date. Actually, yeah, that patch can land as soon as Dylan approves it. He hasn't approved it yet. That's why. So hopefully Dylan is approving some PRs today. He told me this morning he was going to get through and try to do some reviews and approvals this afternoon. So that patch is actually sitting there waiting for him to review it so I can commit it. But it's a generic patch now. It's no longer dependent on that date because the date is going to be set in the update check when we push it out. So the update server is going to give it the date. And if that date is there, then it will throw that banner up saying, hey, this branch is end of life. Here's how long you've got to get off of this branch before you lose security support. But previously it knew if you had the previous stable version that it was no longer going to be, or if your branch was no longer supported, it knew that. But it wouldn't tell you that until after the support already ended. So now you get a heads up when the end of life date gets set, you get that 4-month warning. That's the new thing with that. This server-side settings from MariaDB thing, that was a pretty short patch. Oh yes, I have an idea for next week's live stream. Yep. Hopefully, next week's live stream would be a release celebration of some sort. That'd be really cool to get this release out the door this coming week. So yeah, there's a lot of our blocker bugs that are left are related to the MariaDB MySQL 8 stuff. As I mentioned before, that was a huge, very intrusive patch. It touched a lot of stuff, and adding the independent support for MariaDB also required a lot of changes in several places because there were things that made assumptions about, if we're using MySQL, we're going to do it this specific way. That, hey, we can do that on MariaDB too, not just on MySQL. And so those places had to be updated to say, either one of these databases, we can do this specific thing. A lot of that code that was doing specific things was supposed to live in the database drivers. And for some reason, there were a few places where it wasn't. We're supposed to have the generic code, do X. And then the database code would say, oh, if there's a specific way I can do that on this database, we'd shell out to that driver and give it its specific thing to do it. But we did find a few places where it was, there was code that looked at which database driver you were using. And if we're using MySQL, let's do it this way for efficiency or whatever. And so, yeah, there were several little follow-up bugs with, and the notifications on my phone are being noisy. I apologize for that. There we go. I can get that silenced. So yeah, there's follow-up bugs for that, which affected both 5.2 and Harmony, because those are the two places we landed all the MySQL 8 MariaDB stuff. So yes, that did not land on 5.3. You notice down here, there is absolutely nothing blocking 5.3. It's ready to go. That's actually not quite true. I'm logged in as a non-privileged user so as to not show off the security stuff so that nobody can see that before we actually release it. There are security bugs blocking all of these releases as well. So those are remaining. And those are living on we did get a private repository set up on GitHub to house security fixes so that we can actually check them in and run all the build tests on the automated testing from GitHub and do our own QA testing on a full build of Bugzilla with those bugs applied without having to do it locally and avoiding Git, which is a cool infrastructure fix. Our security fixes are going to be a little bit better tested than previously. So we don't have emergency follow-up fixes, follow-up releases to the security bugs like we've had a few times in the past, hopefully. We had the reviewers' word for it that they tested it and things worked, and then they didn't get a lot of edge cases and so forth in the past. And so we'd end up with an emergency release 3 or 4 days later with a bug fix for a security update. So anyway, as you can see from the little bit of stuff that's left on here, we are like this close to having the release out the door. And so hopefully we can have it this week. And part of the gate to getting things done right now is that myself and Dylan are pretty much the only people with approval privileges that are active in any way, shape, or form. And both of us have other things going on in life that we're not getting a lot of time to spend on Bugzilla. And so trying to get both of us in the same place at the same time to work through approvals to get patches committed is kind of a pain in the ass. And Dylan has been a bit busier than I have been, and so most of it's been me doing coding on work, getting the stuff ready for release, and then getting him to go off and sign off on my fixes so they can be committed. And he hasn't been having a lot of time, so I've been spending a lot of time waiting for pull requests to get committed. On the one hand, I have admin access to the repository. I could override that and just commit stuff anyway if we really wanted to rush it. But I would rather not rush and have proper reviews done on my code because I've been away from this code base for 5 or 6 years and just getting back into it the last 5 or 6 months. And I really want the eyes of somebody that's been on the code more recently looking at my stuff before it gets committed. Because I'm pretty sure I probably broke some stuff on my own patch. So all I know I have because there's been lots of stuff found on my pull requests before they've landed. Which is why I'm doing this. I don't want to give you guys sucky code, so I'm not going to rush the review process with my admin press just to get around Dylan not having time to go approve them. So that's been some of the delay with you can only get so many pull requests in the queue that haven't landed yet before you really can't do anything else before they start landing. Unless you merge all of the pending pull requests into your new requests, and then you have to do fun things with trying to merge them again when all those other pull requests land before you can land the new pull requests. And it's just a major headache. Especially when a lot of them depend on each other, but you're trying to keep them separated for easy review purposes. So that is one of the big pushes that I'm going to do as soon as we get this release out the door. It's been very hard to try to mentor new developers into the program right now because so much of what's landing right now is stuff that really can't be done except by the core developers because it's the final push for getting the release out the door, and it's got to be the right people looking at it, especially with the security bugs. It's only the people with security access can play with those. So that's one of my biggest goals after we get this release out the door is to recruit more developers. And we've had several people hanging out in our Discord recently that are interested in doing development work. And there's been some PRs put in already that are kind of sitting there we haven't been touching because they're not release blockers. And I am excited by that stuff. I want to get those developers moving and get their stuff pulled in. And the more we can get developers other than me and Dylan working on this stuff and getting trusted in the project, the better things are going to go in the future. Because then we're not going to be hung up on, we've only got one person besides me that can approve my patches, and they only have time to look at it once or twice a week, or once every couple of weeks. So that's what my biggest goal after getting 5.2 out the door is getting more people involved and doing some triage parties and looking through the old bugs, getting all the stuff that doesn't matter anymore taken out, and bugs that we've forgotten about prioritized. And we did some quick looks a couple months ago at the existing bugs. There are 25-year-old bugs in the bug database for Bugzilla that haven't been fixed yet, or have been fixed and nobody realized there was a 25-year-old bug for it, so it never went and got resolved, which is hopefully the case on a lot of them. So we are going to have to go through those at some point and figure out what's still there. That's going to be a big project because we have well over 1,000 bugs in the database. I had a blog post prepped somewhere where I had counts in them. It was, let's see if I can find that real quick. because I have those numbers. Where did all of my sites go? It's on WordPress.com, and I changed it around since the last time I was playing. Was it there? Or it's just broken. Okay, let's try log out and log back in, because obviously WordPress is confused right now. Hey, that fixed it. Now I can see it. Okay. Well, that's a post, not a page. That's why I can't find it. Okay, there's our numbers. We have 2,336 total open bug reports as of when this was compiled, which I think to give me a last edit date on here. It doesn't, but this was at least January. I haven't touched this in a couple months. So in January or so, we had 2,336 total open bug reports. 1,588 of them are over 10 years old. 1,015 of them are over 15 years old. 237 of them are over 20 years old. So yeah, Emmanuel saying GNOME devs are encouraged to close bugs after a year of inactivity. And we should probably start doing something like that. The part of what's in there, I think there's a lot of feature requests that we've never closed because they're like, it's a valid feature request, even if it's old. But then there's also bugs that are actually that old, and I don't know if we need to find a different way to compile feature requests so they don't clutter the bug reports, or if we, I don't know. They are marked as a answer request in Bugzilla. Maybe we just need some better static queries to set up some saved queries to search them separately. But then that's part of the problem too, is I know the ability to mark a Bugzilla bug as a feature request is a relatively recent invention, like in the 5.0 range. Maybe it was 4.2 or so, because BMO has it, and so does 5.0. But Bugzilla has been around for years, and that feature didn't exist for the longest time. So that's probably something we have to do, is go through and make sure those older bugs are classified correctly, whether they're feature requests or not. And if they're not a feature request and the bug is that old, I don't know, do we see if we can still reproduce it and then get it flagged for follow-up? Yes. This should be an extension, not part of core. That's another good thing. Bugzilla has an extremely capable extension system now. And if it's missing something you need, we'll add it so the next version will support your extension. There are hooks everywhere in the code. It's a lot like WordPress in that regard. If you've ever written a plugin for WordPress, there are hooks for darn near everything. And you can override all kinds of things with your extensions. And Bugzilla is just like that. We've got hooks all over the place that will make calls into your extension if your extension has a hook registered for it. And so there's a lot of features that could be implemented as an extension. As a matter of fact, if we come over here on the schema list, all of these changes from 5.9.1, about 3/4 of those new tables on here are actually tables that were added by extensions that are on by default in Harmony. So we could probably, and that's one of the things I wanted to try that I haven't gotten around to doing yet, is disabling all of the extensions in Harmony and finding out how much of this is still a mess. Because it might not be as bad as it looks. It's just all of those extensions adding things. Because there are a lot of extensions, there are a lot of things in Harmony that actually got implemented as extensions as they should have been. And quite a few of them are on by default in Harmony right now. The dashboard page and users having actual profiles and OAuth 2 authentication. And there's the mentor program, the anti-spam stuff, push notifications. All of that stuff is the webhook system. All of that stuff is implemented in extensions. So that'd be interesting to see how Harmony even works without all of those extensions and stuff on by default if we were to disable them. Because that's the other thing that we need to do definitely is test upgrading from the older versions to Harmony with all of those extensions disabled. Because that's all the core needs to be responsible for upgrading, is what's actually in core. So we need to get from core 5.2 to core 5.9.1 or 5.9.2, whatever it ends up being at the time. And that's all we care about because all of those extensions are brand new and it's the responsibility of those extensions to do whatever schema changes they need to do when you enable them. So then we'll have to try enabling all those extensions again after that upgrade is done and see if any of them are still broken, because then those extensions themselves have to do whatever upgrading is necessary if something was broken by that upgrading from an older version that affected that extension. Which potentially would be only if it made assumptions about the state of the database when it was created instead of actually making sure everything was in the state it wanted. Because they're all new extensions. Except for one. The votes is an existing extension on 5.0 and 5.2 because that was a feature that was in core and moved into an extension. So that actually has update code in core up to the point when the extension took over. And it has code in core to make sure it doesn't accidentally nuke it, because the extension is taking over. So we may do that with some other features at some point, because there's a lot of things in core in Bugzilla that probably should have been extensions, if the extension system had existed when it was implemented. Things that are definitely optional features. Excuse me for a moment. Been sitting here for an hour, definitely time to hydrate. We have a REST Services API. And then we also have, I think it's under integration. No, it's under the Web Services API. Because there's a core API in addition to Web Services. Which has the extension stuff in it. Now this is still the Web Service API. Where's the... somewhere in here we had a link to the Perl API docs. There it is. There we go. There's all the stuff you can interact with as an extension. And that is in addition to all of the hooks on the code that will call back into your extension. So this here is the guide to the objects that you can interact with, where you can fetch objects and deal with them. And then it seems like we have yeah, there it is. There's a list of all of the hooks that call out. And I'm actually not sure if that is up to date because I think that list is manually maintained in that Bugzilla hooks module. And I'm pretty sure there's been some added in various places in the code where people forgot to update the hooks module to include the fact that they'd added it. So that is something else that we probably need to do at some point, is audit all of the hooks on the code and make sure they're actually all documented in the Bugzilla hook module. And on top of the hooks, we have, that was the first thing we were looking at earlier. Yes, we have the REST API. That can do a lot of stuff, and that is one of I know Danny alluded to that in chat earlier, about writing stuff to sit on top of it. That as much as, it'd be a pain in the ass to rewrite Bugzilla from scratch because the code base is huge. And it does what it needs to do, and there's no reason to rewrite it. Perl works. But there's a lot of new developers out in the world that don't know a lot about Perl. And if they're not willing to learn it, little known fact, I learned Perl 25 years ago by hacking on Bugzilla. I was not the original developer of Bugzilla. I got involved with it a year or two later. And I was using Bugzilla for a project I was working on for a company I was working for at the time. And made some of my own changes to it and submitted them. And they said, hey, you're making a lot of changes. How about you help us out? And eventually I wound up in charge of the project. So funny how things happen like that. But anyway, so yeah, I learned Perl by hacking on Bugzilla. And I learned PHP by hacking on WordPress. Things work that way sometimes. So, but yeah, for the people that aren't interested in trying to learn Perl by picking up Bugzilla, one of the things that we really, really, really want to do is to get this REST API to be complete and all-inclusive, so that it can do everything that an extension could on client side, everything that the existing web interface can do. Because then somebody can write their own web interface for it in whatever language they want and talk to the back end. And the back end can stay being Perl, so we don't have to rewrite it because the code is huge. And trying to rewrite the back end is going to be a pain in the ass if somebody wanted to take that on. I mean, literally, it would take you 5 or 10 years to rewrite everything on the back end if you worked on it full time. But the front end stuff is not quite as huge of a task. And there's a lot of front end developers out there that are really good at writing, JavaScript apps that'll sit on top of a back end engine. So that would be one of the coolest things ever, is if we get the existing code to become more of a back end engine for the bug database. And you could write whatever front end you want to sit on top of it. And you can make it look pretty and do awesome things with it. And maybe we can even have a new front end to distribute with core that is prettier than the Perl template-based one that we have now, and is better suited for mobile devices or something like that. Because that's the other issue we have, is that we don't work well with mobile right now. We're getting there. It's a lot better than it used to be, but it's slow and steady changes to get there because it's all Perl code and template toolkit templates. And a lot of the structure is not done in a way that makes it easy to reformat it on the fly in the user interface to make it look prettier on mobile. And so that's one of those places where having a new front end to sit on top of it is, a pure JavaScript front end or, something like that would be really cool to make it look pretty on mobile. So I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. I think I'm out of things to talk about at this point. We've been here just over an hour, which is short for us because I've gone 3 hours in the past, but I was doing coding stuff on the way off on a boat because I had to leave for dinner. So yeah, we have these last few. There are a couple of these database follow-up bugs that still have a couple issues that need to be worked out, that we will hopefully have done in the next day or two. But other than that, it's getting the last of these PRs landed, which are already sitting there waiting for Dylan. And then getting the security bugs in, and then we're done and ready to release. And so that's what I'm hoping to do over the course of this next week, is to prime the website updates and get the last of these PRs landed and have the security bugs ready to merge. And then we will hopefully have a release before the end of the week. Aiming for Wednesday or Thursday, I hope. Fingers crossed. Because I've been in the sysadmin business long enough to know that I hate Friday releases, especially if they have security content in them, because you don't want to waste your weekend. So if we don't make it by Thursday, we'll hold off another week yet, but hopefully by Wednesday or Thursday this week we can be ready to release. Or Tuesday, but that's probably dreaming, because there's really not much left. We're so close, unless we get some other blockers in there. But again, that also depends on getting me and Dylan in the same place at the same time, because it's definitely going to take both of us working in tandem to push all of that stuff out. And that could require scheduling. So it may be that we get it to the point where everything is actually ready to land and ready to push out the door. And we have to schedule it a couple days in advance to get time for both of us to be in the same place at the same time to actually do the release itself. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, so hopefully this week. Maybe I'll do the t-shirts this week too. By that I mean this thing that I'm wearing. That is a 15 or 20-year-old t-shirt. I forget how long ago it is, but they don't make them anymore. You can't get them anywhere. There were only a couple hundred of them made when they made them the first time. And they gave them away at OSCON and at Mozilla all hands events and that kind of stuff. I know we gave a few of them out to developers back then. And you can see the one that I'm wearing, the ink is all crackling apart and falling off. And I would love to have a new one that doesn't look like it's 15 years old. If just for myself, I want one. But that would be a little bit of a moneymaker for the project too. I know the place we were looking at for doing them, I think we get $3 per t-shirt out of it, and they're going to cost like $15 or $20 or something like that to buy them. Because it's, we're as a project the size we are, we're definitely not going to do enough volume to justify doing a 100 t-shirt advance order. We couldn't afford it. So we do a print on demand, and they cost a little bit more per item because of that. But that way we can get the t-shirts available again. Maybe some mugs or something, I don't know. That's the cool thing about doing the print on demand is, and the unfortunate side is they're a little bit more expensive, but the cool side of it is that we can have a variety of products without throwing a lot of capital in it in advance. And that way we're not wasting the money you guys are donating towards having, or getting us a developer to work full time. And if I'm the person that ends up being the developer, it's going to be one heck of a tax headache. Because I'm on the board of directors for the foundation and or corporation, whatever you call it. It's a 501c4, so we're not a foundation, but it's a nonprofit anyway. But because I'm on the board, if we pay me, there's a crap ton of paperwork we have to file with the IRS to justify it. So if I'm that developer, it'll be a headache. So maybe by the time we get enough money raised to afford a developer, we'll have somebody else involved enough to bring them on board as that developer or something. But, I guess we should call it a day. I don't have anything else prepped to talk about. We've gone off on several tangents and talked about several cool things already since what I ran out of talking about. So I appreciate chat for that, bringing up the ideas. So I think we'll call it. And let me throw this thing out real quick just to see if it still works.
Buggy says hi.
I've definitely had an echo. I will have to figure out where that echo is coming from before the next stream. Oh, you know what? Well, I think I just found the source of the echo. Yay! That was
Buggy
it.
says hi.
Okay.
Buggy says hi.
Okay. I can swear I didn't trigger that again. Okay, phantom alerts. But yeah, we'll call it there for the day. Thanks for stopping in, everybody, and we will. I imagine if we actually end up doing the release this week, that we will probably have a Gorilla stream at some point to celebrate. But otherwise, we will see you next Saturday.